So the scoring system that was assigned to the project was this 5x5 for what it says here is a large project. Now what's interesting here is that there's a few things we can do with this kind of widget is we can change that to say, well, let's change the perspective to a 5x5 with a small project outlook. In a small project, all of those risks, even the medium moderate kind of ones, would actually count as, whoa, it's bad day in the office, these are scary risks. So as you change your perspective, go back to the large, you can see that it reorganizes where those things would be pitched. So I'm assuming, because there was a lot of movement there, that those two risk matrices are the risks were probably financial, right? So what's happening is the min and max thresholds for each of these columns, the moderate column, the high column, even the low column, even all of those risks all dumped into the very high column, right? So if it was risks that were majoring on reputational impacts or some other qualitative subjective thing, then actually you may have seen less shifting around of the dots or the discs, whatever you want to call those, on the matrix there. But it's a very useful tool that you can come up with a perspective that might be your customers, that might be one for you personally as an engineer just locally on a project, just keeping your head down and doing your own thing. You could create a risk matrix just for yourself if you really wanted to, but obviously falling into line with the consistency, and the reporting would still occur with the corporate requirement or the customer requirement. But it is possible to see risk through the eye. Risk is in the eye of the beholder, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's like what affects me, what I think is high risk, what you think is high risk could be very different things. So these tools are here to help you sort of navigate that, help you prioritize. So if you can get all the engineers logging on for a short amount of time, dipping in, dipping out the system, and when they're in the system, using these tools to help themselves do risk better, right? If they go in and they can only see risk, as often is the case, through the gigantic megacorp perspective of risk, their risks will look absolutely inconsequential and will be deprioritized into that green zone. Right? How helpful is that?
Yeah, yeah.
Like if everything's green, oh, then everything's peachy. No worries.
Well, maybe.
I'm not on anyone's radar yet. Whereas your personal PID matrix and personal definitions could be set up in such a way that actually you've got some more refined tolerances for what constitutes a big problem for you, that will give you headaches in the future. So yeah, I don't know, I think that's just something worth thinking about. I'm not a huge fan personally of these risk matrices. I personally think all you ever really need is like a 3x3 to very quickly refine, is this a material risk or not? And if it is a material risk, is it actually worse than that? Is it some kind of existential risk? So I kind of tend to want to see the world in very simplistic terms. Not a risk, stop wasting my time. Yes, it's a risk, I'll get to it. Oh
Yeah.
dear, I really, really need to prioritize that column. So I tend to see those 3 columns, and then in probability terms, anything that's less than 1%, definitely on that lower column, anything up to 50% and anything above 50% probability of occurrence. 3x3. That's the way I would very quickly use that to my advantage. But yeah, obviously corporations have their ERM, GRC. It's kind of forced on them, and they have to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's it's got its place, but it can often become the main thing when it's not. The main thing is how do you help people do stuff quickly and let them get on with their lives, get back into the world of doing the actual do on the project, rather than being in here in this tool and learning the jargon of ERM, GRC. Other things that might be helpful here on this widget, obviously we can switch over to opportunities, and we can see the matrix definitions might be a little different here, and the colors certainly are. But also, I don't know if this example has any setup, but if we can just focus on time impacts or qualitative impacts, which only affect the environment. Oh, nothing there. So immediately I've got an insight. like I'm on the phone or I'm writing an email or I'm walking over to the guy's desk saying, hey, Mr. Environmental Dude, you haven't identified any risks, or you've not correctly administered in the system the risks that have environmental impacts. Yeah, that's not what we want. Can you help? So
Right.
it might be health and safety. We've got a few health and safety, and that feels appropriate. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe you're thinking, I can think of a longer list than this. So you're already drilling down and starting to get some insights with just a few simple clicks. I quite like that. When you're in the cost and time, we have this extra thing called an impact tag. So I'm pretty sure that I won't have anything here, but in the data in this example.
Okay.
But if you have your cost impacting against key date 1 on the project, or key date 2, or your time is impacting on the impact tag of key date 1 or key date 2, or the time risk impact affects the delaying of the start of the project or the start of a milestone of a handover, you can get those insights here on the widget, on this matrix view, which people tend to want to see. So I think that's a really smart thing to consider. So when you're building your structure, what are your objectives? So we call them impact tags in here, but I think there's a lot of mileage, a lot of value that could be gained by structuring data against your objectives. Because when you look at ISO 31000 and all these other sort of definitions that we use in risk management, if you don't have an objective that's at risk, then you don't have risk. So
Right.
it's not that the project is at risk, it's the constituent parts of what the project represents that are the value propositions of the project. Which individual organs within the body of the project are at risk is a more intelligent question, which is why I started doing this, and probably upsetting Mark Turner's original demonstration material. But I started putting these things in to just show people, think about it sideways, laterally think here. What could you be using this for? Actually, there's probably more value to be gained out of this qualitative system by categorizing against impact categories, where the impact category is the objectives. I know, it's who'd have thought? It's what we're here. It's what we're here to do. But you won't often see that thinking happening in other people's spreadsheet risk registers or whatever.